The chamber was built for creatures who didn't breathe the same air. Ambassador Commander Elias Rook felt that the moment the doors sealed behind him, pressure equalizers whispering, translators blinking like watchful eyes. Above, a dome of transparent alloy revealed the night side of an unnamed world, a thin crescent, cold and indifferent, hanging behind the dais of the Harmonized Council. 21 member species, 300 delegates, enough flags and ceremonial sashes to bury a civilization. Rook walked alone to the speaking circle at the center of the floor. No entourage, no dramatic music, just the soft hum of environmental systems and the faint, steady pulse in his throat that he refused to call fear. He carried a single slate in his left hand. It held the only thing that mattered: terms. A figure rose at the far end, Counselor Vale, a tall, blade-thin Archon, with skin like layered basalt, and eyes that reflected light in a sharp, metallic way. Vale's voice came through the chamber's translation mesh as calm, tired authority. Humanity requests the floor. Again. Granted, the automated moderator chimed. Rook stepped onto the circle. The chamber's recording pylons rotated toward him. Red lights blinked to indicate lawful capture. Every word archived, indexed, and admissible under council statute. Good. He preferred the galaxy on the record. He activated the slate. A hologram of text unfurled in the air, crisp and plain. No rhetoric, no poetry. This is the final warning of the Sol Accord, Rook said, and his voice carried without him raising it. By unanimous vote of our Union Assembly, and under Article 17 of the Council Charter, right of self-defense and protection of non-combatants, we submit formal notice. Murmurs rippled, a wave of translated whispers. The Council hated being reminded of its own laws. Rook continued. Over the last 39 days, 3 human frontier habitats in the Helios Reach have been seized by proxy forces operating under the authority of the Keth Dominion. Their stated rationale is resource stabilization. Their actual actions include forced relocation of civilians, denial of medical access, and the detention of non-combatant minors as leverage. He let the words sit like a weight. On the upper tiers, some delegates shifted, others didn't. Politics had calloused them. A set of dates appeared, time-stamped with council format. We require the following, and we will accept nothing less. 1. Immediate cessation of all Keth Dominion operations within the Helios Reach. 2. Release of all detained civilian personnel and return of seized medical shipments. 3. A council-certified inspection team within 72 standard hours to verify evacuation and restoration of habitat autonomy. 4. A signed commitment from the Dominion to submit to arbitration on disputed mining claims. He didn't look at Vale. He looked at the recording pylons, because he wanted the archive to catch his eyes, steady, not pleading. The deadline is 72 hours from the moment this warning is entered into the council record. If the Dominion fails to comply, humanity will initiate enforcement actions under Article 17 and related humanitarian provisions. We will establish evacuation corridors. We will disable military assets operating in the Reach. We will secure the habitats. We will not target civilians. A few laughs sparked, short, sharp sounds, like utensils dropped on stone. From the Keth delegation, an envoy rose. Keth were mammalian, thick-necked, built for gravity. Their eyes were glossy black, expression unreadable to most species. Their envoy wore a sash of authority, and the smile of a politician who thought he had already won. Ambassador Rook, the Keth said, voice syruped by translation. You speak as if you have jurisdiction. The Helios Reach is, how do humans say, contested. We are stabilizing disorder. We are preventing piracy. Your miners are Undisciplined. Rook's fingers tightened on the slate. Undisciplined. That was how you justified a cage. We have filed evidence, Rook said. Images, logs, medical reports. This chamber has received them. It is not contested whether your troops cut oxygen lines to force compliance. It is not contested whether your proxies fired on evac shuttles. The Keth envoy spread his hands, a practiced gesture. Tragic misunderstandings in a chaotic region. Rook felt the old, hot instinct in his chest. Vengeance shaped like a fist. He smothered it. You have an off-ramp, he said, keeping his voice level. Take it. Councillor Vale leaned forward. Ambassador Rook, are you issuing an ultimatum? Rook met Vale's gaze now. I am issuing a lawful notice with a humanitarian deadline. The Archon's eyes narrowed. And if the Dominion refuses, hesitation was blood. Then the Sol Accord will intervene with force sufficient to end the detentions and secure the habitats. The chamber erupted into layered voices. Translation struggled, then stabilized. A smaller figure on the analyst tier rose. Someone Rook had requested be present. Not human. She was Lysa Ven of the Nakari, a species that looked like an elegant compromise between aquatic and avian evolution. She had translucent skin along her cheek ridges, faint bioluminescent filaments glowing in patterns that shifted with emotion. Her eyes weren't eyes so much as clustered lenses, multiple focal points that could widen independently, making her gaze feel like a camera choosing what to reveal. She was Council adjacent, an independent tactical analyst contracted by the Council itself, which made her presence inconvenient for anyone trying to dismiss evidence as human propaganda. She spoke bluntly, without the ceremonial padding most species use to avoid embarrassment. I have reviewed the evidence, Ven said. Her bioluminescent filaments pulsed a cool blue, a Nakari sign of clinical certainty. The oxygen cut was deliberate. The evac shuttles were fired upon. The detainees are civilians. The Dominion's claim of stabilization is not supported by the data. The Keth envoy's smile thinned. Analyst Ven, you are here to advise, not to editorialize. Ven tilted her head. You asked for my opinion. That is how advising works. A few delegates made sounds of amusement, quick, involuntary. Ven's literalness had a way of slipping past the room's armor. Rook felt a flicker of gratitude he didn't let reach his face. Councillor Vale raised a hand, forcing quiet. The Council acknowledges receipt of the Sol Accord's notice. The Dominion will respond within the time frame. The Keth envoy bowed slightly, still smiling. We will respond. Rook deactivated the hologram. He should have felt relief. Instead, he felt the cold certainty that the galaxy would do what it always did. Test the edge of the human boundary, convinced it would bend. As the chamber dissolved into side conversations, Ven stepped down from the analyst tier to meet him at the exit corridor. Her filaments glowed a curious green now, a pattern like thin river deltas across her throat. You are very calm, she observed. It's a skill you learn, Rook said. Ven blinked, each lens shuddering at a different rhythm. In my species, when someone says final warning, they either mean it, or they are performing dominance theater. Rook looked at her. Which do you think this is? Ven's filaments shifted, blue, then a sharp white spark. I think the Council believes it is theater. I think the Dominion believes you are constrained by politics. I think they have not studied humans closely. Rook exhaled slowly. I'm trying to keep them alive. Ven paused. You are trying to keep them alive. Rook started to answer, and then his slate buzzed with an encrypted priority ping. He didn't need the header to recognize the channel. Fleet intelligence. His thumb opened the message. A single line scrolled across the slate. Helios Reach Habitat C. Transmitted distress. audio included. Rook's mouth went dry. He tapped the audio. A child's voice, thin with panic, flooded his earpiece. They said if we don't sign, they'll vent the East Ring. Mom says don't cry. Please, please. Then a deeper voice, muffled, laughing, and then the sound of air screaming out of a breach. Rook froze in the corridor, the council's polished walls suddenly feeling like a cage. Ven's lenses tightened. What did you receive? Rook swallowed hard, forced his hands to stop shaking. The deadline started, he said, voice flat, and they just answered. He looked up at the dome, beyond the corridor window. The galaxy was vast, but cruelty traveled fast, and the clock had just become a weapon. Cliffhanger. Rook's slate flashed again. New intel. Dominion activating stabilization protocol in Helios Reach. Civilian life support targeted. Rook stood in the Sol Accord's forward embassy ship, pale December, watching the hollow briefing with the kind of stillness that made junior officers stop talking. The room smelled like recycled air and coffee that had been burned twice. The ship's intelligence bay was a triangle of screens and tight professionalism. No banners, no speeches, just data. On the main display, the Helios Reach rotated, an ugly braid of asteroid belts and mining habitats, threaded through with trade lanes that kept half the sector fed. Dominion stabilization protocol is a legal euphemism, Captain Sato said. She wasn't the protagonist, but she was the sort of person the protagonist trusted. Blunt, competent, allergic to drama. They're cutting life support in rings they can't control. They turn civilians into leverage. Rook's jaw clenched. How many habitats? 3 seized, 2 threatened, 1 in active venting attempt. Habitat C. We have audio confirmation of decompression. Casualties unknown. Rook stared at the rotating habitat schematic. He pictured the East Ring, families in pressure suits, hands on bulkhead doors, eyes wide, praying the seals held. He wanted to burn something. He didn't. He forced his mind into the colder space where solutions lived. Options, Rook said. Council intervention? Someone offered, already sounding doubtful. Rook gave a thin smile. The council is a committee. Decompression is faster. Captain Sato tapped the console. A new display bloomed. Dominion task groups, proxy fleets, and the choke point called the Varick Gate, a narrow corridor between 2 gravitic anomalies where ships had to slow and align or be shredded by tidal shear. The Dominion's main reinforcement route runs through Varick Gate. If they lock it down, they can drip-feed troops while keeping us out. Rook's fingers traced the gate's geometry on the air. Then we don't meet them at the habitats. We meet their logistics. A voice behind him, Ven's voice, cut in with her signature bluntness. You will ambush them, she said, as if naming a weather event. Rook turned. Ven stood near the doorway, an observer badge pinned to her suit. Her bioluminescent filaments flickered in pale yellow. Concern maybe, or alert curiosity. You're still here, Rook said. The council assigned me to observe the escalation and provide analysis, Ven replied. They wish to understand if humans are, as you say, serious. Rook let out a dry breath. Tell them yes. Ven's lenses narrowed. Serious is not a tactical plan. Rook looked back to the gate. No, but it's the foundation. He keyed his slate. We have 72 hours. I want the Dominion to feel the clock. The room shifted. People leaned in. When Rook spoke like that, the ship listened. We establish evacuation corridors to the habitats immediately, Rook said. Broadcast them in every language we have. Make it clear. Any civilian vessel in those corridors is protected. Any armed vessel crossing into those corridors will be disabled. Disabled, an officer repeated. Not destroyed. Rook nodded once. We don't get to become what we're fighting. Sato watched him, measuring. And when they ignore the corridors? Rook's voice stayed quiet. Then we still keep them open. He tapped again. Second, we hit Varric Gate. Not with brute force, with math. A logistics officer frowned. Math? Rook pulled up Dominion supply manifests. Fuel, munitions, habitat sealing foam, oxygen cartridges. You don't win wars by shooting ships. You win by making their ships hungry, cold, and out of options. Ven's filaments glowed blue. You will starve them. I will stop them, Rook corrected. If they withdraw, they live. If they surrender, they live. If they keep venting children, they lose their ships. Sato folded her arms. We don't have a fleet in position. Rook's mouth twitched. We have something better. He gestured to a side screen where a list of civilian freight companies blinked. Names that looked harmless until you noticed their tonnage. Contracted logistics, he said. We mobilize our freighters. We turn commerce into a weapon without firing a shot. The room went quiet in that way that signaled respect. Because everyone in the Accord knew the dirty secret of the galaxy. The species with the best supply chain didn't just survive. They decided who ate. The pale December vibrated subtly as its engines adjusted course. Then his slate chimed again. Fleet intel, urgent. He opened it. Council motion filed. Temporary stay on hostilities. Effective immediately. Rook stared. The Council, those polished cowards, had issued a stay. A legal maneuver that would paint any human action as aggression, giving the Dominion political cover. Then watched his face. Her filaments flickered sharp white. They are trying to bind you, she said. Rook's voice stayed even, but something inside him cracked like ice. They're trying to buy time. For whom? Ven asked. Rook didn't answer immediately. He didn't have to. They both knew time was currency, and the Dominion was rich in it right now. Sato cursed softly. If we violate the stay, they'll brand us as rogue. Sanctions, blockades. They'll turn half the sector against us. Rook looked at the habitat schematic again. East Ring, air screaming out, child crying. He felt the weight of restraint, of being the reasonable species, the one that followed procedure. He also felt the weight of necessity. There's a difference, Rook said, between staying hostilities and staying rescue. He turned to Ven. Does the council motion mention humanitarian evacuation? Ven blinked. Her lenses moved independently as she scanned her own feed. It is vague. Vague is a weapon, Rook said. He looked at Sato. We proceed with evacuation corridors and rescue operations. We do not fire on their ships unless they enter the corridor armed. We document everything. We stay inside the law so tightly it chokes them. Sato's eyes were hard. And Varric Gate? Rook paused. In that pause lived the internal war. Vengeance wanted to strike. Mercy wanted to wait. Necessity wanted to act. He chose a third thing. Leverage. We don't ambush, he said slowly. We inspect. A few officers frowned. Rook continued. We request council authority to interdict any vessel carrying life support sabotage equipment under humanitarian compliance. We already have evidence they're using those supplies to vent civilians. We make the council either sign it or refuse on record. Ven's filaments pulsed a surprised green. You will force their hypocrisy into the light. Rook gave a thin, grim smile. If they want politics, I'll give them politics sharp enough to cut. The pale December jumped. Stars stretched, snapped, and reassembled into the hazardous brilliance of the Helios Reach. Outside the hull, asteroid fields glittered like broken teeth. Ahead, the Varric Gate shimmered. Space itself distorted by the twin gravity wells. And there, sliding into alignment, was a Dominion convoy. 6 heavy carriers, escort frigates, and most damning, 3 ships marked with civilian hazard insignia. Civilian markings, an officer muttered. They're hiding supplies under relief flags. Ven's filaments flared angry orange. That is, how do you say, dishonest? Rook's eyes stayed on the convoy. Open broadcasts, he ordered. All channels. His voice went out across the gate, translated into every language within range. This is Ambassador Commander Elias Rook of the Soul Accord. Under Article 17 humanitarian provisions, you are ordered to halt for inspection. You are carrying equipment used in civilian life support sabotage. Comply within 5 minutes. Refusal will result in non-lethal disabling of propulsion systems. There was a pause. Then the Dominion carrier answered, smooth as oil. Human envoy, the voice said. You are not authorized. The Council has issued a stay. Stand down. Rook leaned forward slightly, as if speaking to someone across a table, rather than across kilometers of vacuum. The Council issued a stay on hostilities, he replied. Not on rescue. Not on inspection of contraband used to kill civilians. You have 5 minutes. The Dominion voice chuckled. You are very brave in your little ship. Sato's jaw tightened. They think we're bluffing. Rook's mouth was a line. Let them. The 5-minute timer began. And then, on the tactical feed, a new signature bloomed. Fast, massive, and wrong. A Dominion warship emerged from the gravity shadow of the gate. Its hull architecture unfamiliar, even to seasoned analysts. Unknown class. Energy buildup. Ven's lenses widened. Her filaments went pale, almost colorless. That is not a ship, she whispered. That is a... The unknown vessel's prow opened like a flower of metal. A beam lanced out, not toward pale December, but toward the convoy's own civilian ship. The relief-marked vessel vanished in a silent flash, torn apart in a surgical burst. The Dominion voice returned, suddenly sharper. Inspection denied. Rook felt cold wash through him. They had just destroyed their own marked ship. To remove evidence, to escalate, and to show they'd rather burn their own mask than let humans touch it. Rook's slate chimed again. Another intel packet. Habitat C, East Ring venting confirmed. Casualties estimated, thousands. Rook didn't move for a heartbeat. Then he spoke, voice quieter than before. Record everything, he said. And bring me the Council's stay order. Sato looked at him. Why? Rook's eyes stayed on the unknown warship. Because, he said, they just turned law into a joke. He straightened. And I've done laughing. The unknown Dominion ship's weapon arrays spun toward the pale December, and a warning tone screamed, target lock, mass driver charge, 30 seconds. 30 seconds is a lifetime, if you know what to do with it. Rook's mind ran faster than the ship. Helm, he said. Angle into the sheer. Sato's head snapped toward him. That's suicide. It's math, Rook replied. The Varick Gates gravity wells created a corridor of relative safety. Ships aligned, stabilized, crawled through like careful insects. Outside that corridor was tidal violence, invisible forces that could tear a vessel apart. Or, if you threaded it right, throw you sideways like a stone skipped across water. The Dominion ship expected a standard evasive vector. Humans rarely gave anyone standard. Do it, Sato ordered, and the pale December rolled. The hull groaned as the ship's inertial dampers fought the sudden shift. Rook felt pressure push his organs against his ribs, a reminder that even in the clean abstraction of space war, biology still paid the bill. On the screen, the unknown warship fired. A mass driver slug, a chunk of dense alloy accelerated to terrifying speed, crossed the distance in a blink. It missed. Not because the Dominion couldn't aim, because the pale December wasn't where physics said it should be. The slug hit the edge of the shear zone and curved, warped by gravity, corkscrewing away into the dark. Sato's grin was brief and feral. You're insane. Professionally, Rook said. Then, strapped into a crash seat behind him, made a sound that might have been laughter if her species had laughter. Her bioluminescent filaments flashed a stunned white. "You used the hazard as a shield," she said. "It's not a shield," Rook replied. "It's a knife. Hold it right, and it cuts the other guy." The unknown warship adjusted. Its arrays reoriented, learning. Rook's timer was still running. Inspection denied, contraband destroyed, civilians dead. The Dominion had escalated in the one language the galaxy always understood: force. But humans were fluent in something older than force: consequences. "Broadcast," Rook said. "All systems, Council included." His face appeared on feeds across the gate, then across the sector. In freighter cockpits, habitat control rooms, Council lounges where delegates sipped expensive fluids and pretended they weren't responsible for bodies. "This is Ambassador Commander Elias Rook," he said. "The Dominion has refused lawful inspection, destroyed a relief-marked ship to conceal contraband, and has fired on a humanitarian vessel. This broadcast is recorded. The Council's stay order is hereby noted as insufficient to prevent ongoing civilian harm. We will proceed under Article 17. Any Dominion vessel in the Helios Reach is ordered to power down and submit to inspection. Surrender terms are available. Evacuation corridors remain open." Then, because he knew the galaxy, he added something simple and human. "If you keep killing civilians, we will stop you." The Dominion carrier responded, but the feed stuttered. Someone was jamming. Sato swore. "They're trying to cut the broadcast." Rook's eyes narrowed. "They can't jam what's already everywhere." He tapped a command. The pale December released a cloud. Not missiles. Data pods. Small, cheap, hardened transmitters. Dumb metal shells stuffed with high-power broadcast relays. They scattered like seeds into the gate's gravitational turbulence, riding the currents, bouncing signals across a dozen vectors. Jamming became a game of whack-a-meteor. The Dominion's channels filled with human words anyway. Ven's filaments pulsed blue, impressed despite herself. "Your communications engineering is spiteful." Rook's mouth twitched. "We prefer redundant." Then he leaned closer to the tactical map. "Now," he said, "spring the trap." Sato's brows rose. "Trap?" Rook gestured to the civilian freight signatures massing on the far side of the gate. Ships that looked like commerce, because they were. But every one of them was accord contracted, every cargo hold packed with exactly what the Reach needed to survive. Oxygen cartridges, sealant foam, water, medicine, and one other thing: decoy transponders. A logistics officer spoke, almost reverent. "We're deploying the Ghost Fleet." Rook nodded. Freighters began to light up with false signatures. Projected mass, projected weapons, projected fleet tonnage. An illusion woven from honest metal and dishonest mathematics. It wasn't meant to fool censors forever. It was meant to force hesitation, because hesitation bought time. Time saved lives. The Dominion unknown warship fired again, this time not at the pale December, but at the freighter cluster. Rook watched the projectile arcs. "Counter," he said. From the freighters, pods launched, not missiles again, but compact ablative shells carrying dense aerosolized chaff designed for mass drivers. Microscopic particles that created a shifting gravitational noise field in the shear zone. The slugs hit the noise field and began to wobble, their trajectories degrading, until they drifted into the gate's tidal edge and were ripped off course. "We're blocking kinetic fire with dust." Rook's gaze didn't leave the map. With smart dust. The Dominion convoy tried to advance anyway. Rook sent one more message, this one not broadcast to the Council, but to the Dominion command channel directly. "Surrender terms attached. Evac corridors open. Power down and you live." The Dominion replied with a single sentence. "We will not be humiliated by primates." Ven made a dry clicking sound. They are choosing pride over survival. That is, inefficient. Rook felt something in his chest tighten. He understood pride. Humans had plenty of it. But pride didn't justify venting children. Fine, he said softly. Then we'll be efficient. He authorized the first disabling strike. A human drone, no larger than a toolbox, peeled away from the pale December, riding the gate's turbulence. It wasn't armed with explosives. It carried a precision plasma cutter and a magnetic clamp. It latched onto the Dominion carrier's engine bell and sliced a ring of conduit at exactly the point that would trip a safety shutdown. The carrier's engines died. No fireball, no debris cloud, just a sudden loss of thrust as the ship drifted, helpless, into the gate's required alignment buffer. The Dominion escorts panicked. They fired, they jammed, they tried to ram. Humans kept disabling. One by one, propulsion systems blinked out across the convoy. Rook watched, jaw tight, forcing himself to keep it surgical. Restraint versus vengeance. He chose restraint, because restraint was control, and control was the only thing between justice and atrocity. Then a new feed punched through the mesh. Habitat C, a shaky camera image, a corridor smeared with frost, emergency lights strobing. Civilians in pressure masks clustered around a sealed hatch. Somewhere behind the hatch, a man screamed. Someone else pounded. A Ket soldier's voice cut through the feed, translated by the camera's auto mesh. "Sign the transfer document," the soldier said, bored, "or we open the next ring." Rook's fingers dug into his palm. The soldier's helmet turned, as if sensing the camera, and he laughed. "Your council can watch," he said. "So can your humans." Then he raised his weapon, and the feed cut to static. Rook's breathing slowed. That was the moment he felt the internal line shift. He wasn't choosing between mercy and necessity anymore. He was choosing between stopping this now or being complicit. Sato's voice was low. "Elias, orders?" Rook looked at the unknown Dominion warship again. It hadn't retreated. It had held position, like a knife aimed at the throat of the gate. Ven's filaments glowed a cautious green. That ship is different. It is not logistics. It is a message. Rook nodded once. Then, we reply. He keyed a secure line to the Sol Accord Special Operations Group, waiting in stealth just outside the gate's sensor net. "Black Kestrel," Rook said. "This is Rook." A voice answered, calm, metallic, listening. "I want that unknown ship boarded," Rook said. "Not destroyed, boarded. I want its data core, its command logs, and any evidence of what they're doing in the habitats." A pause. Then, "That's a hard insertion." Rook's eyes stayed steady. "So are they." He glanced at Ven. She watched him like someone watching a storm decide where to break. "Why board?" she asked. "Because," Rook said, "if the galaxy is going to pretend this is politics, I'm going to hand them proof so sharp they can't swallow it." Black Kestrel replied, "Copy. Boarding in 10. Rook swallowed. Boarding meant close quarters. It meant sending people into a steel throat. It also meant ending the Dominion's ability to hide behind paperwork. Then the tactical map flared. A new signal. Not Dominion. Something else. Ancient transponder codes, long dormant. A fleet signature emerging from behind the asteroid belt. Too large to be coincidence. Too perfectly placed to be accidental. Sato's voice went tight. "Unknown fleet. Not ours." Ven's filaments went pale. "I recognize those patterns," she whispered. "Those are Council peacekeepers." Rook's stomach dropped. The peacekeepers were a myth most species invoked when they wanted threats to sound real. A neutral enforcement arm that rarely appeared because neutrality was expensive. If they were here, the Council had made a move. And Rook didn't know if it was to stop the Dominion or to stop humans. Cliffhanger. A peacekeeper broadcast cut across the gate. Cold, official. SO Accord vessel. Cease all actions. You are hereby ordered to stand down or be interdicted. The peacekeeper fleet didn't announce itself with menace. It announced itself with certainty. 10 ships, each larger than the pale December by an order of magnitude, slid into formation like a courtroom assembling its benches. Their hulls were plain, no empire markings, no intimidation paint, just smooth alloy and sensor clusters that looked like eyes. The broadcast repeated, "Cease all actions, stand down." Sato's knuckles were white on the console. If they fire, we can't outgun them. Rook felt the old anger rise again, hot, immediate. The council had watched civilians die. Now they showed up to police the rescue. He breathed, slow. Restraint versus vengeance. Mercy versus necessity. He could defy the peacekeepers. He could gamble on the galaxy's shock. He could be the monster the council already wanted to paint him as. Or he could do what humans did best when trapped in a room full of rules. Use the rules until they broke the people holding them. Rook opened a channel to the peacekeeper commander. "This is Ambassador Commander Elias Rook," he said. "Identify yourself." A voice answered, clipped and genderless through translation. "Commander Threx, Peacekeeper Enforcement Arm. You are in violation of Council Motion 73. Rook kept his tone civil. "Motion 73 is a stay on hostilities. We are conducting humanitarian inspections and rescue corridor protection under Article 17. Threx paused. "The Council has determined your actions constitute escalation." Rook's mouth tightened. "Then the Council has determined that oxygen-venting children is not escalation." Silence. Ven shifted behind him, filaments flickering in uneasy patterns. "You are poking a bureaucratic predator," she murmured. Rook didn't look away from the comm. Predators understand boundaries. He transmitted a data packet. Evidence logs, timestamps, the relief ship destruction, the decompression audio. "Commander Threx," Rook said, "we have documented Dominion war crimes. We have offered evacuation corridors and surrender terms. We have disabled propulsion, not destroyed ships. We are operating within humanitarian law." Threx's reply was immediate. "The Council will review." Rook's voice sharpened, just slightly. "Review is not a tourniquet." Sato leaned close. "Elias, Black Kestrel is on approach. If the peacekeepers interdict, our boarding team gets trapped." Rook's eyes flicked to the timer overlay. Black Kestrel, 6 minutes to contact. He made a decision that tasted like iron. "Commander Threx," Rook said, "if you interdict us now, Dominion forces will continue venting habitats. Civilians will die during your review. Is that the enforcement arm's intent?" Threx hesitated, a fractional delay. Rook pressed. "Answer on record." On the analyst feed, Ven's filaments flashed bright, startled green. She understood what he'd done. He had moved the fight from space to narrative. A recorded question, a forced answer. Threx's voice returned, stiffer. "Our intent is to prevent a wider war." Rook's reply was quiet. "A wider war is already here. It's just being fought against civilians." He cut the channel. Then he opened a broadcast to the council chambers. Not a plea, a mirror. "Councilors," he said, voice carrying through every relay pod still spinning in the gate's turbulence. "You issued a stay order to prevent violence. The Dominion responded by venting Habitat C's East Ring. The peacekeepers have arrived to stop rescue operations. If you wish to prevent war, order the Dominion to withdraw now. Release the detainees. Allow inspection. The deadline stands." He paused, letting the silence do work. "Or record yourselves choosing procedure over lives." Sato exhaled. "That's going to make enemies." Rook's eyes stayed on the tactical feed where the convoy drifted disabled, engines dead, ships alive. "It's going to make clarity," he said. Then made a small sound. "Your species uses shame as a weapon." "We call it accountability," Rook replied. Then Black Kestrel's leader pinged. "Contact in 90 seconds, the voice said. "Going in." Rook watched the stealth signatures bloom near the unknown Dominion ship. Tiny, fast, purposeful. The peacekeepers shifted formation subtly, like a judge leaning forward. Threx's channel opened again. "Sol Accord vessel, you are ordered to halt." Rook's gaze was hard. "We are not halting rescue." Threx's voice dropped. "If you board that vessel, you will be in violation." Rook's answer was simple. "Then arrest us after we save the people you're ignoring." For a moment the bridge was silent, except for the hum of the engines and the distant ping of sensor sweeps. Then the unknown Dominion ship did something that made everyone's blood run cold. It began to broadcast. Not a threat, a file. A compressed data stream forced onto open channels, too large, too clean, too deliberate to be accidental. Ven's lenses snapped wide. "That is a confession packet," she said, stunned. "They are releasing it." Rook frowned. "Why would they?" The file name rendered in standardized council indexing. Stabilization Protocol / documentary record / authorized executions. Sato whispered, "No." The file opened automatically on several feeds. A video window bloomed. A habitat. A line of civilians. A Dominion officer reading a list of names. The officer spoke, translated without mercy. "Resource allocation requires reduction. Compliance is a privilege." Then, Rook's throat tightened. Then the civilians were marched into an airlock. The outer door opened. No shots, no blood, just silence and bodies tumbling like discarded tools. Then's bioluminescent filaments went dead white. A Nakari sign of shock so deep it bordered on physical pain. "That is genocide," she breathed. "Documented. Deliberate." Rook's hands went cold. This wasn't about mining claims. This wasn't about pride. This was about an empire deciding some lives were arithmetic, and broadcasting the proof as a message. "You can't stop us. Everyone will see it. No one will act." Rook looked at the peacekeeper fleet again, and felt something shift in him. Not vengeance, not rage, but a hard, lethal calm. The kind of calm that came when the moral ambiguity died and left only duty. Sato's voice shook. "Elias, the whole sector is seeing this." Rook nodded, eyes locked on the horror playing out across the galaxy. "Good," he said softly. "Now no one gets to pretend they didn't know." He opened the Peacekeeper channel one last time. "Commander Threx," Rook said, "you have the evidence. You have the authority. Interdict the Dominion. Now." Threx's silence was heavy. Then finally, "Council authorization pending." Rook laughed once, short, humorless, pending. He turned to Sato. "We proceed," he said, "if the peacekeepers fire." "Then," Rook said, voice steady, "the galaxy will watch them choose law over lives in real time." Black Kestrel breached the unknown ship. On the tactical feed, their signatures vanished into the hull. A second later, the unknown ship's systems spiked. Security drones, internal alarms, power reroutes. Then the ship began a new sequence, a massive energy buildup in its core. Ven's voice went tight. "That is not weapons. That is..." Rook's eyes narrowed. "Self-destruct." Sato swore. "They're going to erase the evidence." Rook slammed a command. "Patch Black Kestrel, now." The comm crackled. "We're inside," Black Kestrel said, breath controlled, gunfire distant in the background. "Heavy resistance. Data core located." Rook's voice was iron. "They're spinning up self-destruct. You have 2 minutes. Pull the core and get out. Then, copy. Rook stared at the countdown forming on the unknown ship's signature. T-minus 120 seconds. He could feel the internal conflict again. Send people into hell, or lose the proof. But he'd already chosen. Mercy was not the absence of force. Mercy was force with a purpose. And his purpose was the civilians gasping in the Reach. Get them out, he whispered, not into the calm, into the universe. Outside, the peacekeeper fleet held position, watching, waiting, as if morality had a meeting schedule. Cliffhanger. The unknown ship's countdown hit T-minus 30, and Black Kestrel's voice came through, strained. Core secured, but there's another file. It's a list, human names. The list hit Rook like a punch he didn't see coming. Human names, not a handful, thousands. Habitat rosters, family registries, medical IDs, child vaccination tags, all compiled, organized, labeled. Targeted population index, Sol Accord Frontier. Ven's filaments flickered a sickly green. They were not reacting, she said, voice thin. They were planning. Rook's eyes locked on the list, then on the countdown. T-minus 18. He didn't have time to process grief. He had time to decide what grief became. Black Kestrel, he said. Extract now. Gunfire crackled through the comm. We're moving. On the tactical feed, the stealth signatures launched from the unknown ship like sparks. T-minus 5. Rook's hands were steady on the console. He watched. T-minus 0. The unknown ship detonated, not a cinematic fireball, but a contained, engineered implosion that folded its own core into a tight plasma bloom. Debris flashed, then scattered into the gate's shear, instantly shredded into glittering vapor. Black Kestrel's signatures escaped the blast by meters measured in terror. Sato exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a year. They made it. Rook didn't move. Bring them aboard. He turned back to the broader map. Because the list meant one thing. The Dominion wasn't just securing resources. They were cleansing inconvenient species from contested zones. And humans were on the spreadsheet. Your warning. They mocked it because they thought you were civilized. Rook looked at her. We are. Ven's lenses shifted. Civilized species often die politely. Rook's mouth tightened. We don't. The peacekeepers finally moved, not to interdict humans, to interdict the Dominion. A broadcast cut through, this time from Commander Threx, voice clipped and colder than before. By emergency authorization of the Harmonized Council, Keth Dominion forces are ordered to stand down and submit to peacekeeper custody pending tribunal review. Failure to comply will result in enforcement action. Sato blinked. They're doing it. Rook felt no satisfaction, only a grim relief that came too late for thousands. On the Dominion channels, panic erupted. Others tried to flee. And in that chaos, Rook moved. Phase 2, he ordered. The Sol Accord's larger fleet arrived. Not dramatic, not triumphant. It appeared like a fact. Carriers, frigates, rescue barges, medical ships. An entire architecture of war designed around one strange principle. Rescue first. Even if it cost more. Even if it was slower. Even if it hurt. Human ships broadcast evacuation corridors again, brighter now, backed by fleet tonnage that made mockery of earlier laughs. Rescue barges pushed toward the habitats, deploying sealant foam and emergency oxygen like surgeons moving through a disaster zone. Dominion proxies tried to block the corridors. Humans didn't annihilate them. Humans cut their engines, jammed their targeting, and when a proxy frigate fired anyway, disabled its weapons with pinpoint strikes that melted barrels and left hulls intact. A Dominion commander screamed over open comms. You could destroy us. Why do you? Rook answered, voice flat. Because we're not here to punish you. We're here to stop you. On Habitat C, Marines breached the seized control center. Not with brutality, but with clean efficiency. Flash barriers, stun rounds, and a med team right behind them. The first human through the door didn't shoot the surrendering Keth soldier. He grabbed the Habitat's oxygen valve and cranked it open. People lived because of that choice. On a different Habitat, a civilian shuttle drifted off course, tumbling, systems failing. Dominion fire grazed it. A human frigate broke formation to shield it. Sato watched the feed and whispered, "That frigate is exposing its flank." Rook didn't look away. That's the point. Humans escorted the shuttle to the corridor anyway, taking hits on armor that could be repaired, because civilians couldn't. And the galaxy watched. Not just the violence, the discipline, the restraint that wasn't weakness, but aim. Ven stood behind Rook on the bridge, silent. Her bioluminescent filaments pulsed slowly now, blue, then a deeper color Rook didn't recognize. "What does that mean?" he asked, nodding at the pattern. "In my culture it means, I believed a story, now I am seeing reality." Rook's gaze stayed on the Habitat feeds. Reality is expensive. Ven's voice tightened. The Council will try to bargain. The Dominion will try to claim misunderstanding. They will say the list was forged. Rook nodded. Which is why we don't just win the battle, we win the record. Black Kestrel returned with the data core intact, burned at the edges, but readable. The file list included more than the atrocity videos and population index. It included internal Dominion communications, orders, signatures, authorization chains, and most damning, a directive labeled Political Cover, Council Stay Motion Requested. Rook stared at it. The Council stay hadn't been an accident. It had been requested by the Dominion to buy time for venting. You're telling me the Council helped them? Rook's eyes were ice. Not all of them, but enough. He felt the internal conflict one last time. Vengeance whispering, expose them, burn them, make them hurt. Mercy whispered, don't let rage make you careless. Necessity spoke like a command. Finish it properly. Rook made his choice. He opened a system-wide broadcast and patched it into the Council's own archive. He didn't shout. He didn't posture. He simply laid out the evidence like a body on a table. Counselors, he said, this is the Dominion's authorization chain for civilian venting operations. This is their population index of targeted humans. This is their request for a stay motion to delay rescue. All are time-stamped. All are verified by Peacekeeper signature. Ven stepped forward beside him, unprompted. Her filaments glowed bright, unwavering blue. I, Analyst Lysa Ven of the Nakari, certify these files as authentic, she said bluntly. The Dominion committed deliberate mass killings. They attempted to conceal evidence. They manipulated Council procedure. Humanity did warn you. The chamber feed showed chaos. Delegates shouting, some fleeing their seats, others frozen. Councillor Vale's basalt face looked carved from shame. Rook continued, we are offering off-ramps even now. Dominion units that surrender will be treated under prisoner of war statute. Civilian evacuation corridors remain open. Any counselor who participated in delaying rescue will be subject to tribunal review. Sato murmured, you're declaring war on half the political structure. Rook's voice didn't change. I'm declaring consequences. Then the peacekeepers acted decisively, interdicting remaining Dominion warships, seizing command crews, freezing assets in real time. The Dominion's options collapsed. Not because humans were unstoppable, because humans made it impossible for anyone decent to pretend nothing was happening. The fighting ended in pockets, messy, tragic, but finite. Humans secured the habitats. They didn't cheer. They counted survivors. They patched hulls. They carried bodies. They built temporary schools in cargo bays because children needed somewhere to be children again. Days later, in a neutral station above the Reach, a tribunal convened. Faster than anyone thought possible. The council, shamed into motion, tried to call it restorative. Rook called it what it was, a reckoning. Dominion commanders were tried. Council collaborators were exposed. Others were arrested under their own laws. A new treaty was drafted at the frontier itself, signed not under chandeliers, but under the scarred metal ribs of Habitat C's repaired East Ring. The Helios Reach was declared a protected autonomous zone. Inspection teams were permanently installed. Evacuation corridors became law, not suggestion. And the Sol Accord did something the galaxy didn't expect. It offered reconstruction aid to species that had fed the Dominion's fear. Not free, not naive, conditional on transparency and compliance. Because hope without consequence was just a pause. Ven stood beside Rook at the signing, her filaments glowing a steady, solemn blue. Cameras hovered, recording for the archives. A council representative, new, trembling, earnest, asked Rook quietly, "What do we call this incident in the record?" Rook looked at the repaired habitat ring, at the rescue barges still docked, at the faces of survivors who had learned what it meant to be disposable. He thought of the warning, the laughter, the stay order, the venting, the list. He answered simply. "Call it what it was," he said. "A test." The representative swallowed. And what was the result? Ven spoke before Rook could, blunt as always. "The result is that humanity warned you," she said, "and you did not listen." Rook turned his gaze toward the stars beyond the station window. Vast, indifferent, full of possibilities and predators alike. He felt the weight of victory, heavy with names that wouldn't be there to sign treaties. He also felt the shape of earned hope, scarred, real, stubborn. The representative nodded shakily. "We won't forget." Rook's mouth tightened into something almost like a smile, sharp and tired. "You will," he said. "That's why we wrote it down." He tapped the tribunal seal on his slate, archived, permanent, impossible to erase. And as the last signatures flashed into the record, the galaxy finally understood what the laughter had missed. Humans hadn't been boasting, they'd been restrained, until they couldn't be anymore. Final line. "We thought we were alone. Then you gave us a reason to introduce ourselves."